Zalith, a renowned genetic engineer from the planet Veridos, was known throughout the galaxy for her groundbreaking work in bioengineering. She had dedicated her life to studying the genetics of different species, and her discoveries were unmatched. Her reputation was built on logic, science, and the belief that everything, even the most complex feelings and desires, could be explained through the lens of biology. To Zalith, emotions were merely chemical reactions, and relationships were no different from any other scientific experiment. She could control every aspect of her life with precision, but there was one thing she couldn't solve: her deep, gnawing loneliness. Despite her success, Zalith had never found a connection with any of her fellow Veridosians. They were all either too distant or too similar, and she found it impossible to form a bond that went beyond the intellectual. She had tried to date, to form relationships, but time and time again, she had found them lacking. They never seemed to satisfy her. Emotional or intellectual needs. A human cannot satisfy me, she often told herself, dismissing the possibility that someone could ever break through the walls she had built around her heart. That was until the Earth delegation arrived. The Earth government had recently sent a diplomatic group to Veridos to explore potential collaborations in the field of genetic research. Zalith, while initially uninterested, had been invited to a series of meetings with the humans. Though she doubted anything meaningful would come from the interactions, she agreed, for the sake of her work and reputation. After all, Earthlings were known for their practicality and innovation, and perhaps there was something they could teach her. The humans arrived at the Veridosian spaceport in their sleek, silver ships. Zalith barely noticed the grandeur of their arrival, her mind preoccupied with her thoughts on the upcoming discussions. What could they possibly bring to the table? Humans were known for their adaptability, but when it came to genetic science, they were still light years behind her species. As she entered the conference room, her eyes were drawn to Dr. Adam Renner. He was tall, with dark brown hair that seemed a little too long for someone so professional. His clothes were simple but well-tailored. Nothing flashy, just enough to suggest a quiet confidence. His eyes met hers across the room, and for a split second, she felt a strange flutter in her chest. She quickly dismissed it. He was just another scientist after all, one more person she had to tolerate for the sake of her work. The meeting began, with Zalith presenting her research on Veridosian genetics, speaking passionately about the future of cross-species engineering. She explained the difficulties of combining different biological systems, detailing her breakthroughs in a way that felt almost detached. Science was her passion, and that passion had always been enough to keep her focused. But as the meeting went on, she couldn't help but notice Dr. Renner's unwavering attention. He asked insightful questions, his words precise yet casual, and his curiosity seemed genuine. Unlike the other humans she had met, Dr. Renner didn't speak with arrogance or boast about Earth's achievements. Instead, he seemed fascinated by everything Zalith said. He even smiled as if he understood the weight of her work, and that smile caught her off guard. It was almost as though he wasn't just looking at her research, but at her, the person behind the science. Zalith shifted uncomfortably in her seat. What was this feeling? It was something she had never experienced before, this strange mix of intrigue and discomfort. She had spent years perfecting her emotional detachment, guarding herself from distractions, but now in the presence of this human, she felt something unexpected stir within her. The meeting ended after several hours, and Zalith excused herself quickly. She told herself it was simply the long day of work catching up to her. There was no reason to be unsettled by a human's attentiveness. They were just here to collaborate on science. There was nothing more to it. But that night she couldn't shake the feeling. She found herself replaying Dr. Renner's questions in her mind. He had a way of speaking that made her feel like he truly understood her work, as if he could see, beyond the scientific jargon, into the heart of what she was trying to accomplish. His words made her feel seen, and that was the most uncomfortable thought she could entertain. The following days passed in a blur of research meetings, late-night discussions, and data exchanges. But no matter how focused Zalith tried to stay, on the task at hand she found herself thinking about Dr. Renner more and more. She hated it. She had always prided herself on her ability to keep her personal feelings separate from her work. She had spent so long perfecting that balance, and now, for some reason, this human had thrown it all out of whack. One evening, as they worked side by side in the lab, Zalith couldn't help but notice the way Dr. Renner looked at her. It wasn't the curious, intellectual gaze she had grown used to from her colleagues. It was something else, a deeper, more personal kind of interest. She turned away quickly, focusing on the data in front of her. "Are you all right, Zalith?" Dr. Renner asked, his voice soft yet tinged with concern. She nodded, trying to keep her tone professional. "Yes, just focusing on the task." But even as she said the words, she felt her heart race. She couldn't explain why, but being near him made her feel unsettled. She didn't like it. She didn't like how vulnerable it made her feel. She was supposed to be the expert here, the one with all the answers. And yet, with every passing day, Dr. Renner was slowly breaking down the walls she had so carefully built around herself. As the days turned into weeks, Zalith found herself grappling with emotions she had long denied. Was it possible? Could it be that this human, with all his simplicity and imperfections, had somehow found a way to make her feel something she had convinced herself she was above? No, she thought, shaking her head. It was impossible. Humans were not capable of fulfilling her needs. No one could. But deep down, she felt the doubt beginning to creep in. The more time she spent with Dr. Renner, the more she wondered, what if I was wrong? Days passed, and Zalith continued her work with Dr. Renner, though now with a growing sense of unease. She couldn't explain it, but something had changed between them. The feeling she had dismissed earlier, the strange flutter in her chest, had only grown stronger. At first, she had chalked it up to simple curiosity or perhaps the stress of working with someone from another species. But it was becoming clear that her emotions were more complex than she was willing to admit. The collaborative project they were working on, the genetic compatibility of humans and Veridosians, was progressing well. Zalith had expected the humans to struggle with the technical details, but Dr. Renner had proven to be more than capable. In fact, his sharp insights often pushed her own thinking further than she had imagined. He was a natural, and Zalith found herself respecting him more and more, not just as a scientist, but as a person. This was something new for her. She had never respected anyone so much in this way, let alone a human. But as their partnership deepened, so did the odd feelings she couldn't quite understand. The way Dr. Renner would smile when she explained a particularly difficult concept, the way his voice softened when they debated something important, all these little moments seemed to affect her more than they should. She told herself it was merely the shared intensity of their work. Science often brought people together, didn't it? One afternoon, after a particularly long and tiring session of lab work, Zalith was reviewing some data when she felt Dr. Renner's presence beside her. He had a habit of standing just a little too close, something she couldn't decide if she liked or disliked. His proximity made her feel aware in a way that unsettled her. "Is something bothering you, Zalith?" Dr. Renner asked, his voice low but gentle. "You've been quieter than usual today." She looked up at him, meeting his steady gaze. For a moment she felt caught in his eyes, those brown, warm eyes that always seemed to be searching, understanding her in a way no one else had. Her heart beat faster, and she quickly looked back down at the data, trying to focus on something, anything, other than the feeling rising within her. "I'm fine," she said quickly, perhaps a little too quickly. "Just a little tired, that's all." Dr. Renner didn't seem convinced. He studied her for a few moments longer before speaking again. "You know, I'm not going to bite," he said with a light chuckle, clearly trying to break the tension. "We've been working together for a while now, and you can trust me. If something's on your mind, you can talk about it." Zalith stiffened, her mind spinning. What was this? Why was he being so understanding? She had spent her entire life focused on logic, pushing aside anything that felt too personal, too emotional. But this human, this strange, imperfect human, was making her question everything she thought she knew about herself. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. Should she tell him? Should she admit to herself that there was something more here than just professional respect? That there was something stirring inside her that she couldn't control? But how could she? How could she explain this strange connection she was beginning to feel without sounding foolish? Instead, she chose silence. "It's nothing," she muttered, hoping to end the conversation. Dr. Renner didn't press her further, but Zaleth noticed he seemed disappointed. He turned away, but not before giving her a reassuring smile. "All right. But remember, I'm here if you change your mind." Zaleth watched him walk back to his station, and for the first time she found herself wondering what it would be like to have someone truly care about her. She had always been the one others turned to for answers, for guidance. But what if she was wrong? What if she needed something more than intellect and control? What if she needed someone who saw her, not just as a scientist, but as a person? Later that evening, after the lab was quiet and the stars of Veridos twinkled outside the window, Zaleth found herself lying awake in her quarters. She couldn't stop thinking about Dr. Renner, his smile, his eyes, the way he made her feel like, maybe, just maybe, there was a world outside of her work, a world where emotions and connections mattered. She turned over, trying to push the thoughts from her mind, but they refused to leave. The connection she felt with him was undeniable, and for the first time in her life, Zaleth wondered if she had been wrong all along. Was it possible for a human to truly satisfy her, emotionally, intellectually, in a way no Veridosian ever had? The next day, Dr. Renner approached her again, this time with a suggestion. "Zaleth," he began, his voice once again soft and understanding. "I was thinking, maybe we could take a break from the data for a bit. I know we've been working nonstop, but it might be good for both of us to step outside the lab for a while." Zaleth looked up, surprised by the offer. It was rare for her to take breaks, let alone do anything outside of her scientific work. She hesitated, then found herself nodding. "I suppose it wouldn't hurt?" she said. "Great," he replied with a grin. "There's a park nearby. It's not much, but it's quiet. We could just talk. She hadn't realized how much she missed that simple act. Talking to someone without the pressure of work, of expectations, of being the perfect scientist. Could she let herself have that? Could she talk to Dr. Renner without worrying about how she was coming across? The thought was both terrifying and oddly comforting. They made their way to the park, where the night sky was clear, and the cool air of Veridos made Zaleth feel more alive than she had in years. As they sat on a bench beneath the stars, Dr. Renner spoke about his life on Earth, his family, and the simple pleasures he had grown up with, things Zaleth had never considered before. For once she found herself listening, not just to the words he was saying, but to the warmth in his voice, the kindness that seemed to radiate from him. "I never thought I'd be on a planet like this," Dr. Renner said, glancing up at the stars. "But I have to admit, working here with you, it's been a lot more rewarding than I expected." Zaleth's heart fluttered at his words, and she quickly turned her gaze to the ground, unsure of how to respond. Her mind was racing, and she couldn't make sense of the emotions welling inside her. It was then that she realized this wasn't just a passing fascination. It wasn't just curiosity. It was something deeper, something real. "Thank you for this," Zaleth said quietly, her voice softer than she intended. "For giving me a chance to talk." Dr. Renner turned to her, his expression genuine. "Anytime, Zaleth. Anytime." In that moment, Zaleth felt something stir within her, something she couldn't ignore. Could it be that this human, this unexpected partner was beginning to break through the barrier she had so carefully built? Could it be that just maybe a human could satisfy her in a way no one else ever could? Zaleth was unsettled. The more she tried to push her thoughts of Dr. Renner to the back of her mind, the more they seemed to creep forward, like a tide she couldn't hold back. Their late-night conversations had begun to stir something deep within her, something she had long denied, the possibility of true emotional connection. She had always thought her work, her science was all that mattered. But now, with each passing day, Dr. Renner's presence seemed to pull her away from her carefully constructed world of logic and into an unfamiliar realm of emotions. The work they had been doing together was fascinating. Their research on genetic compatibility between humans and Veridosians was yielding promising results. They had discovered several key similarities in their DNA, things that Zalith had never anticipated. Their biology was far more compatible than either species had ever believed. But as the genetic testing progressed, it began to uncover more than just scientific data. It was uncovering parts of Zalith's own identity that she wasn't ready to face. One evening, as they were reviewing the results of their latest experiment, Dr. Renner looked up from the data screen and raised an eyebrow. "Zalith, have you seen this? It's unusual." Zalith glanced at the screen, where the genetic sequence of her DNA was displayed. She had run these tests hundreds of times before, but this new data was different. A human-compatible gene had appeared in her results, a gene that shouldn't have been there. "What is this?" she muttered, leaning closer. She ran a quick analysis, her mind racing. It didn't make sense. As a Veridosian, her species was biologically distinct from humans. Their genetic code had evolved to support their unique biology, their enhanced physical abilities, and their long lifespan. But this gene was distinctly human. It was the kind of compatibility that Zalith had never encountered before. Dr. Renner studied the results beside her, his brow furrowing in thought. "Could this be genetic compatibility?" he asked, his voice laced with disbelief. "It's almost like there's something in your DNA that's human." Zalith felt a strange chill run down her spine. Could it be possible? She had never considered the idea that she might have human-compatible traits, not in her wildest dreams. Her mind raced and she found herself wondering, had she been wrong all along? "Check the sample again," she said, her voice steady despite the uncertainty rising in her chest. "Run a more detailed analysis. This can't be right." Dr. Renner nodded and input the necessary commands. The machine hummed as it rechecked the sequence, running through a series of more precise tests. After a few moments, the results came back. This time they were even more startling. The gene was not a mistake. It was part of her genetic makeup, a part she had never known existed. Zalith stood still, staring at the data before her. She had prided herself on knowing every detail of her biology. She had studied it endlessly, manipulated it to create new possibilities. Yet now she was faced with a discovery that shook the very foundation of everything she thought she knew. "What does this mean?" Zalith asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Renner glanced at her, then back at the screen. "It means that in some way your genetics are compatible with humans. Not just in a superficial way, but at a deep, biological level. It's like your species and ours have a shared ancestry, even if no one has realized it until now." Zalith's mind was in turmoil. She had always thought of her genetics as something unique, something that set her apart from all others, even from the humans. Yet here it was, staring her in the face, proof that there was a connection, something more than just research, something she had never expected. "I don't understand," Zalith murmured, feeling a sense of vulnerability she hadn't felt in years. She was a scientist, and yet this discovery was beyond her understanding. How could it be that human genes existed inside her own? Dr. Renner, sensing her confusion, placed a hand on the console next to hers. "Maybe this is why we've been able to work so well together," he said softly. "Maybe the connection between us isn't just professional. Maybe it's something deeper." Zalith's heart skipped a beat. For a moment she felt the weight of his words settle over her like a heavy cloak she couldn't shed. Could it be? Was the connection she had been feeling all along not just a passing curiosity, but something tied to her very biology? Could it be that, on a genetic level, she and Dr. Renner were meant to be connected? "I don't know what this means," Zalith said, her voice barely above a whisper. She felt exposed, vulnerable in a way that was unfamiliar to her. Her mind had always been her shield, but now it felt like it was failing her. "I never thought something like this could happen. I didn't think it was possible. Dr. Renner, sensing the shift in her tone, gave her a sympathetic look. You're not alone in this, Zalith. We're in this together. We've discovered something incredible, something that could change everything. But we don't have to figure it all out right now. Zalith nodded, her mind racing. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust that this discovery wasn't just some random genetic anomaly. But the doubts lingered. Could she trust her feelings? Could she trust herself, knowing how deeply she had buried her emotions in the name of science? For the rest of the evening, they worked in silence, both lost in thought. Zalith's mind was filled with questions she wasn't sure she was ready to answer. She had always kept her emotions at bay, always focused on her work. But now, those emotions were forcing their way to the surface, and she didn't know how to handle them. As the night grew late and they prepared to leave the lab, Dr. Renner turned to her, his expression serious but gentle. Zalith, I know this is a lot to process, but whatever happens, I'm here for you. We can figure this out together. Zalith felt a strange warmth in her chest. For the first time in years, she felt something beyond the cold logic of her research, something human, something real, and it scared her more than anything else. She had spent her life building walls to protect herself, but now Dr. Renner was slowly dismantling those walls piece by piece. I don't know what to say, Zalith admitted, her voice trembling slightly. You don't have to say anything, Dr. Renner replied, his voice calm and reassuring. You don't have to do anything you're not ready for. Just know that you're not alone in this. As they walked out of the lab together, Zalith couldn't shake the feeling that something profound had shifted between them. The connection they shared was no longer just scientific. It was something deeper, something that went beyond genetics. She wasn't sure what it meant or where it would lead, but for the first time, she didn't feel as if she was walking this path alone. Zalith had always believed she was in control. Her life, her work, and her emotions were carefully organized into neat categories, each one serving a purpose. She had never allowed herself to be distracted by feelings, believing that they only interfered with her true purpose: scientific discovery. But now, as she stood in the quiet of her quarters, staring out at the distant stars, she realized how much had changed. Everything she thought she knew about herself was being challenged. Dr. Renner's words from the night before echoed. In her mind, we're in this together. He had meant it, she could tell. He wasn't just talking about their research, about the shared goal of unlocking the secrets of genetic compatibility. He had been speaking about something more, something personal. And for the first time, Zalith didn't want to push it away. She didn't want to ignore it, like she had done with so many other things in her life. Zalith had spent the past few days reflecting on her emotions, but the more she thought about them, the more confusing they became. The bond she had felt with Dr. Renner wasn't just professional. It wasn't just about the science. It was something more, something she had never allowed herself to experience before. It was a desire she couldn't explain, a pull toward him that was both unsettling and undeniable. She had tried to convince herself that it was just the result of working closely together, the long hours and shared challenges. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was happening, something that went beyond biology, beyond logic, beyond the walls she had carefully built around herself. That evening, after another long day in the lab, Zalith found herself walking to the park where she and Dr. Renner had spent time before. The cool air of Veridos felt different now, more alive, as if it carried the weight of everything she was trying to ignore. She had decided she needed to speak to him, to admit the truth, if only to herself. When she arrived at the park, Dr. Renner was already there, sitting on a bench beneath the vast expanse of stars. He looked up when he heard her approach, a smile crossing his face as their eyes met. Zalith, he greeted her softly. I was wondering when you'd come. Zalith hesitated for a moment, feeling the familiar weight of uncertainty in her chest. But tonight she didn't want to hide. She didn't want to retreat into the safety of her mind where everything could be neatly categorized and controlled. She wanted to be honest with herself and with him. I've been thinking, Zalith said, her voice steady but quieter than usual. About what we've been working on. And about us. Dr. Renner's smile softened, and he patted the spot beside him on the bench. I've been thinking about that too, he said, his voice gentle, almost reassuring. We've spent so much time working together, but I can't help but feel that there's something more between us. Zalith sat down next to him, feeling the warmth of his presence. She had been avoiding these feelings for so long, but now she felt an overwhelming desire to confront them head-on. I don't understand it, she admitted, her voice filled with uncertainty. I've spent my entire life focused on logic, on science. I thought I knew what I wanted, what I needed. But now I don't know anymore. Dr. Renner turned toward her, his expression soft and understanding. You don't have to understand it all right away. I don't expect you to. But I've never felt anything like this before, Zalith. Not with anyone. And I think you feel it too. Zalith looked at him, her heart racing as she realized the truth in his words. She had tried to deny it for so long, tried to convince herself that it was just a temporary distraction. But now, sitting here beside him, she could no longer ignore it. The connection between them was real, and it was something that transcended their species, their work, and their differences. I do feel it, she whispered, her voice barely audible in the quiet of the night. I feel it every time I'm near you. Every time we talk. I don't know what it means or what to do about it, but I can't pretend it isn't there. For a moment there was silence between them. Zalith's heart beat loudly in her chest, and she felt vulnerable in a way she never had before. But this time, it wasn't uncomfortable. It was freeing. She had always prided herself on being strong, on being in control. But now, for the first time, she felt something different. She felt the possibility of letting go, of surrendering to something. She couldn't fully explain. Dr. Renner reached out and gently took her hand in his. It was a simple gesture, but it felt like everything, like an unspoken promise, a connection that went beyond words. You don't have to figure it all out tonight, he said softly. But I want you to know that whatever happens, I'm here. And I'm not going anywhere. Zalith looked at him, her heart swelling with emotion. In that moment, she realized that for the first time in her life, she wasn't alone. She had spent so many years focused on her work, on her science, thinking that those were the only things that mattered. But now, sitting beside Dr. Renner, she understood something different. She understood that connection, that bond between two beings, was just as important as any scientific discovery. And she was ready to explore it, to allow herself to experience something more than just the cold, logical world she had built for herself. I don't know what this is, Zalith said quietly, her voice filled with uncertainty. But I want to find out. I want to see where this can go. Dr. Renner smiled, and in that moment, Zalith felt a warmth spread through her chest, a feeling she hadn't known she was capable of. We'll take it one step at a time, he said. No rush, no pressure, just us. And for the first time in years, Zalith allowed herself to believe in something beyond science, beyond logic. She allowed herself to believe in the possibility of something real, something that couldn't be explained by data or equations. It was a risk, an uncertainty, but it was a risk she was willing to take. As they sat together beneath the stars, Zalith felt the weight of the world shift. She had always been afraid of her emotions, of letting them control her. But now, with Dr. Renner by her side, she realized that she didn't need to control everything. Sometimes the most beautiful things in life were the ones that couldn't be explained, the ones that simply existed because they were meant to. Thank you, Zalith whispered, her voice filled with gratitude. For being patient with me. Dr. Renner squeezed her hand gently. You don't need to thank me. I'm just happy you're here. As the night sky stretched out above them, Zalith knew that her life was about to change. She didn't know where this path would lead, but for the first time she wasn't afraid to walk down it. The days following their confession were filled with a mixture of emotions that Zalith had never experienced before. For the first time, In her life, she found herself questioning everything she had once held as truth. Her work, her beliefs, and her understanding of relationships were being completely turned upside down. But despite the uncertainty, there was one thing she knew for sure. The connection between her and Dr. Renner was real, and it was changing her in ways she hadn't expected. Zalith had always been a woman of reason, a scientist who trusted only what she could prove through data, equations, and logic. But now, standing beside Dr. Renner as they worked together in the lab, she realized that some things couldn't be explained by facts or research. Some things were simply felt, like the bond they shared, the way their hearts beat in sync, the way their minds worked together in perfect harmony. Their work continued, and the genetic research they were conducting was proving to be even more groundbreaking than they had imagined. The compatibility between Veridosians and humans was far more than just theoretical. It was practical, real, and filled with potential. They had unlocked a door to a future where both species could coexist and even thrive together. It was a dream come true for Zalith, but it was also something much more personal. This research wasn't just about science anymore. It was about a future they could build together, one step at a time. One evening, as they sat in the lab reviewing their findings, Dr. Renner turned to her, a soft smile playing on his lips. "You know, Zalith," he began, "I never imagined that I'd find myself in a situation like this. I came here thinking this was just going to be another job, just another research project, but now I can't help but feel like it's something more." Zalith looked at him, her heart fluttering. She had been thinking the same thing, but hearing him say it out loud made her realize how much she had changed over the past few weeks. Her once cold and detached approach to life was slowly being replaced by something warmer, something more connected. And it was all because of Dr. Renner. "I never imagined this either," Zalith replied, her voice soft. "I've always believed in science and logic, but this, what we have, it's beyond anything I can explain. It's more than just data, more than just compatibility. It's something deeper." Dr. Renner reached across the table, taking her hand in his. The touch was gentle, yet it sent a spark of warmth through her. For a moment they sat in silence, the weight of their shared connection hanging between them like an invisible thread. "You've changed me, Zalith," Dr. Renner said quietly. "I didn't know what I was missing until I met you. I didn't know what it was like to feel this, to feel seen, to feel understood." Zalith looked down at their joined hands, her mind racing. She had always prided herself on being independent, on relying only on her intellect and her work. But now, with Dr. Renner by her side, she was starting to realize that maybe there was more to life than just logic. Maybe there was room for love, for connection, for vulnerability. "I feel the same way," Zalith whispered. "I didn't know what I was missing either. I thought I could control everything, that I could keep my emotions locked away. But now with you, I realize I don't need to control everything. I can let go. I can trust." Dr. Renner smiled warmly, squeezing her hand gently. "We don't have to have all the answers, Zalith. We don't have to know what comes next. All I know is that I want to be here with you, exploring whatever this is together." Zalith felt a surge of emotion as she looked at him. She had spent so long guarding herself, building walls to protect her heart from being hurt. But now, with Dr. Renner, she was beginning to understand that vulnerability wasn't something to fear. It was something to embrace. And for the first time, she wasn't afraid to take that step, to open herself up to the possibility of something more than just science. As the days passed, Zalith and Dr. Renner continued to work together, their bond growing stronger with each passing moment. They shared more than just research data. They shared their hopes, their fears, and their dreams for the future. And with each shared moment, Zalith felt herself becoming more and more willing to embrace the unknown, to step into a future where science and love could coexist, where their species could come together in ways no one had ever imagined. One evening, after a long day of work, Zalith and Dr. Renner found themselves standing on the balcony of her quarters, looking out at the stars. The quiet of the night was soothing, and for a moment, They stood together in silence, simply enjoying each other's presence. "Do you ever wonder what the future holds?" Zalith asked, her voice thoughtful. Dr. Renner glanced at her, a glint of excitement in his eyes. "Every day," he replied. "But now I'm not afraid of it. I used to think I had it all figured out. But now I realize that the future is full of possibilities, and with you by my side, I'm ready to face whatever comes next." Zalith smiled, feeling a sense of peace wash over her. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel the need to have everything figured out. She didn't need to control every outcome, every result. She could embrace the unknown, knowing that whatever happened, she wouldn't be alone. "I'm ready too," Zalith said softly. "I don't know what the future holds, but I know that I want to face it with you." And as they stood together, hand in hand, looking out at the stars, Zalith knew that their future was filled with infinite possibilities. The genetic research they had begun together was just the beginning, a small step toward a new world where humans and Veridosians could coexist, could love, and could grow together. And as for Zalith and Dr. Renner, their journey had only just begun. For the first time in her life, Zalith felt truly alive, not just as a scientist, but as a woman who had allowed herself to love, to trust, and to embrace the possibility of a future that was beyond anything she could have ever imagined.